Hello, my pattern making friends. This is Rachel with Things We Wear, and today I'm going to do a video about knit garments and knit pattern making. What is the difference between knit and woven pattern making, and how you can sort of learn to do both. And I'm going to demonstrate things in Tukatek, which is the program I have open now. If you're interested in Tukatek, I've made some videos about it. I'm happy to go into more detail on how to use Tukatek. It's not a program I see a lot of people using these days, but I will open it up for you. Here it is. It's called Tukatek. And they recently relocated their headquarters to LA, so they're really trying to hit the US market. What I love about their software is it is subscription-based and inexpensive. So if you are interested in learning, let's see here, where's the pricing? Here it is. So you can learn for as little as $20 a month. I use the professional edition. I use the $200 a month. If you click into this, there's a few options. So I use the $200 a month option, and it's great for freelancers or if you want to do side projects, because you just don't have to have it when you don't need it. You don't need a huge cost, to put forward right when you start using it, which is great. Comparatively to other pattern making programs like Acumart or Optitex, those programs require a large upfront cost, usually of, let's say, $8,000 and up or so. So it's a very big difference in cost. And so that's why I've started using Tukatek. So I am still learning Tukatek, but I feel like I've gotten pretty decent at it in the last year. So let's talk about knits. So when people talk about pattern making, often they are discussing wovens, because when we think about pattern making, we think about tailored suits, right? So we're often thinking about stuff like this. This is the Bloomingdale's website, and let's look at, I feel like pattern making often is initially associated with things like suiting, okay? Like here, there's lots of traditional pattern making methods on, exactly the shape of the rise and the ratio between the hip and the knee and the tools that you would use to create those beautiful shapes. The same with a men's jacket and women's jackets, although the methodology can be different because, of course, the shapes are a bit different. But on the whole, this is sort of the traditional form tailoring kind of thing. Jackets, collars, shirt sleeves, shirt cuffs, types of cuffs. That's a lot of stuff that you learn when you're learning pattern making. A lot of times you start with men's, and you often start with those really detailed things. Even if we did women's, often things like dresses that are woven. See, this is a woven dress, even though it's very lightweight and flowy. More suiting dresses. Let's see if I can find a suiting dress. Day and casual. They don't really have suiting. Maybe women's suiting. Let's see here. Do they even make women's suiting anymore? That is a question. What to wear for work? So often things for work are going to be wovens traditionally, because usually people associate wovens with something more tailored and chic. This kind of tweed, this is very Chanel. So you'll see a lot of these things tend to be wovens, because wovens are usually associated with being a little bit dressier, of course, a little bit more, they aren't always as comfortable depending on the woven, because they're not stretchy. Although, we definitely make, that's a knit. Don't look, that's not, not a good example. I guess people wear anything to work now. This just feels like everything. But I think most of you know what I mean. The traditional sort of like women's suiting, or sort of like suiting dresses. J. Crew used to have a lot of that stuff. Gosh, I used to wear that so long ago. Let's see if I can find some from J. Crew. Women. I actually think J. Crew had a lot of great... Where's their suiting shop? Maybe they don't even... There it is. When I first started interviewing... Look at that. This is beautiful. I'm really into this. Maybe it's not for everyone, but I think that's so fun and interesting. And I love it with the t-shirt. I'm not fully sold on the wide lapel thing. I prefer just like a skinny, more plain, traditional, like roll tuxedo lapel, but yeah, I really like a high and low. So I love like a shiny something with, something casual like a t-shirt. I think that's interesting. I don't know that I would put a necklace. I think that looks cluttered. I would probably have hair up and with like some interesting earrings, but to each their own. And I think these shoes are kind of weird. They feel like what I wore in the early 2000s or 90s to homecoming. I would prefer something closed-toed with a suiting. This feels like a weird combination of things, but okay. That's not what we're here for. We're here for suiting. I love this. I think it's super fun. I love J. Crew. It makes me sad what they've gone through, but I still love them. Like, this is great. Come on. Anyway, so this is a great example of women's suiting and traditional fabrics, which are wovens. And if you're not really sure on the difference between wovens, knits, basically, if you are interested in pattern making or you're interested in working in the industry, people who already work in the industry will already know this, but there's more or less, let's say 4 major categories when we're working on clothing. So there's wovens, which are going to be things like suiting. And this is just fabric that is woven together. So warp and weft, one thread goes over and under the other one. If you look at your denim jeans, your sheets, suiting, those are all great examples. Button-down shirts, those are going to be wovens. And then there are knits, and knits are going to be something like t-shirts, something like this. And we'll come back to that. But a knit is stretchy. It's cut and sewn. So they're often called cut and sewn knits because they're actually cut out and sewn together. There's another type of knits called sweater knits. And sweaters, let me just show you that really quickly here. So sweater knits, this is a great example of a sweater knit, and I love that you can see the whole garment here. So you can see there's actually no stitch lines. So that's why they call these sweater knits and not cut and sew knits. Sweater knits are knit together. Usually they knit like a panel, and then they'll knit this panel, and then they link it together. So it's basically knit like... It's not using a separate sewing machine the way that a t-shirt is sewn together. If you look at the inside of your sweater, you'll see that it's pretty, it might not be seamless, but the seams are pretty not noticeable. They're because they sort of blend in with the sweater, and they're linked together using the same yarn that's used in the rest of the body. So it's very not noticeable and that's very nice. It's a very nice attribute of a sweater. Another thing about the sweater, if a sweater knit, if you're not aware, is that they are zero waste. So if you're interested in zero waste products, we should all be wearing sweaters because it's basically the most efficient product we can make, because you use a ball of yarn and you make a sweater, and you don't have leftover fabric from this shape from cutting. If we had this as a cutout on a pattern, we would have this shape, and then there'd be fabric here and here that's probably going to waste, and then you'd have the sleeve, and so you'd have all this other wasted fabric. And honestly, yes, we do have fabric recycling to some respect, but for the most part, it's very difficult to recycle blended fabrics. So if it's like poly cotton, what do you do with that? That's really difficult. Some places, like, you can donate your jeans to Madewell. I think they accept jeans and they turn them into insulation. But the problem with that is that jeans aren't really great to be used as insulation. I mean, if you've worn jeans, like, they're fine. I wouldn't say that they're particularly warm. There are materials that we make that are specifically for insulation, and they work really well as insulation. So to me, it's not a great idea really to try to turn something into something else. What you really want to do is try to minimize waste, and then also use it as long as possible. And then if you can figure out a way to downcycle it, that's great. But long story short, it's very difficult to recycle fabrics. And our technology is getting better, of course, but blended fabrics are difficult, and most of the things that we wear now are blended, unfortunately. So it makes it pretty tricky. So these are sweater knits. And then I would say the last category of things that you might work on if you're working in the industry are, I'm going to call them plastics. So something like a bag or shoes, or anything that's leather or felted. And the reason I say that, so there's still a pattern for these. You have to have a square, another square, a seam allowance. All of these things take patterns. But what I mean by plastic, this is a fabric purse. but these are leather or pleather or something. And what I mean by that is that it's not woven together. It's a material that is moldable, so it's soft, but it's still sewn together. So this is a great example of that. Whereas this is a woven. This is basically like a sweater knit kind of. I don't know how exactly you'd explain that, but I think it's kind of like crocheted together. Yeah, so those are the 4 major categories. So we have wovens, cut and sew knits, sweater knits, and then plastics. Plastic doesn't mean that it's plastic per se, but just the word plastic means that it's moldable. And so by that, I mean any material that is non-woven that can be formed into something like shoes or a purse or even a fake leather jacket, for instance. Or a leather jacket would also be a quote-unquote plastic. All right, so today we're going to talk about cut and sew knits. That's really what we're here for. And first off, I love this. This is great. Fan of stars. Do not like the necklaces. I think that's just distracting. But so what makes these styles great and also tricky? So we all have t-shirts at home. And I think the big thing for women that maybe some of us know and think about is that it can be hard. Well, it can be hard for anyone. I don't want to single out women, but women particularly have extra shape in the front, and our shape varies. And so inherently what happens is when we're looking at the side of the body, let me get a better view for you here, one second. All right, so I found this pattern in Clo 3D. This is Clo, if you're not used to working in Clo, and here's one of the avatars. And Clo also comes with a few garments, so it came with this t-shirt. So I figured this would be the perfect thing to show you guys. So the challenge of working on knits is that often we are creating, from the visual standpoint, simple garments, right? We're creating just a t-shirt that's 3 pieces, front, back, sleeve. But the problem is we still want it to fit well. We want it to have nice balance. Like, see how this hemline is even. She doesn't have a lot of drag lines in the back. She does have drag lines coming from her bust, but I'm okay with it. It's reasonable for what this garment is. I think this looks like a pretty good t-shirt, right? It looks like it fits her well. But the problem is we don't have a lot of seam lines to make it fit her well. So in wovens, let's say in contrast, when we look at woven garments, I Googled some Balenciaga stuff. So this is a great example of, we're used to seeing pleats and seam lines in wovens. Even just a plain, let's see here, Ralph Lauren button up women's. So even like if we look at a Ralph Lauren shirt, we're going to have pleats and seams and details that will make it fit the body better. I'm trying to think of maybe this isn't, Ralph normally has some pretty good tailoring, but I'm not quite seeing what I want to see here. I'm just going to look at Chanel here. I can show you. So these are some woven dresses, although a lot of them are very boxy, and they're on people who don't have a lot of curves. So we're not really seeing a lot of those seam lines. But yeah, if we talk about woven garments, we're really used to seeing, she definitely has some darting here. You can see there's a pleat there. There's all sorts of things going on in this garment. So we're used to that. We expect it from woven garments that they're going to be a little more complex and a little bit have more pleating and seam lines and darts. And the problem with something like a t-shirt is we don't get to do any of that stuff. So we have to make it work without those advantages. So let's talk about what people do in order to combat those issues. And there's a few things to discuss. Number one, let's talk about the simplicity of the pattern. So because we can't dart out fabric, meaning we can't reduce the excess here, and of course we're naturally going to have excess because this front length is longer here. We go all the way over and back down compared to the side length, which doesn't have any additional projection, or the back length. So if a t-shirt is a perfect square, like a box, then the problem is it's going to be too short in the front and too long in the back. So one of the ways some knit pattern makers deal with this is they actually make the front a little longer. And you'll see this Clo 3D pattern did this. They have 5 3/4 in the front bust and 5 1/2 in the back bust. So there's more fabric here and it's being eased into this back spec. And then below the bust, it's the same measurement. So you can see that. You'll also see that the measurement differential between back and front armhole is quite different. So I wonder, is there a measurement tool? Still learning my way around this program, kind of. Edit, point and measure. Let's see if we can just measure this. I'm curious what this is. No, that's not what I want. Okay. Let me open up my calculator 1 second here. Okay. So we have 4.334 plus 0.394 measuring the back plus 3.98. So that's 8.7. I remember that number. 8.7. All right, 3.773 plus 3.938. Oops. Okay, it's pretty close. I'm at 8.7. Okay, so it's about a 1-inch difference. I would say if you look at a woven pattern making book, often they'll tell you something more along the lines of the difference between, how do I get rid of this? I don't want that. There we go. The difference between front and back should be more like a 1/2 inch or 3/8 even. I very much disagree with that. So another reason for that in knits, when you don't have a dart, although I kind of disagree with it in general, but if you make the front armhole smaller, so if the front armhole was bigger, and let's try that, and then you can see what that looks like. What will happen is you'll have an excess of fabric here, and it'll sort of droop down. So you want to keep that front armhole nice and snug to the armhole, because otherwise you just get this excess of fabric. It's not a good look. And especially on a knit, knits can go either way. They're very drapey and beautiful, but they can also look sloppy quickly. A woven can look very tailored and crisp, but on a knit, it just kind of falls and it clings to your body. So it doesn't have that, it sometimes doesn't have that same structural feel that a woven can do, which is why if you have a pattern and you try to cut it in a woven and a knit, sometimes it's not well executed in the knit, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and that's one of them, is it just drapes differently, and so it has a different visual appearance. It doesn't mean that it doesn't fit, it just doesn't look good, and so you kind of have to make these adjustments so that it visually looks good. And this is again where being a pattern maker is also being creative and having an artistic eye and understanding the aesthetics of how things should fit. So you'll see that front armhole is a lot smaller, and that helps control the fabric here and the reason that we're going to get an excess of fabric is because your bust is going to pull out the fabric, and then there'll be extra right here. So you have to clean that up. Often people will do that by pinching out the fabric here, like they'll create a slit from here to there and close out the front armhole. I'm not always a fan of that because that swings the front neck wider. It doesn't look like they did that actually here because the front neck is more narrow than the back neck. The other way you can do it is just by shortening. So basically you're increasing the slope. And you can see there's a slight slope difference. Oh, it's very slight. Maybe it's 3/16 or so, maybe an eighth. But yeah, a way that often that is done is there's two ways. You might increase the slope by lowering this point here. So if we go like this and then press. So see, that's cleaning it tighter. It's too tight though because you can see this drag line here forming. So I'm just going to Control Z that, and you can see it's just a little bit better looking. Let's see how it would look if it had less of a shoulder slope. Now you can see that excess of fabric in the front armhole. So that's one reason it's important to clean up both at the top and also at the bottom. So the way we would do it at the bottom is by raising the front armhole only and not raising the back armhole. So that's how you get this bust as a 1/4 inch larger than the back. So if we didn't have that, I'll show you what that would look like. we're going to have an excess of fabric at the front bust. Okay. See how now there's extra fabric here, and when we look to the side, there's more drag lines, and it's sort of like there's more collapsing here. It's slightly high-low. It's just less of a good balance because there's more length here. So when this and this are equal, you're going to have it pick up in the front and sort of fall to the back. So that's why we have to create ways to give our body more length in the front or wherever there's a projection. So yes, I'm talking about a t-shirt and I'm talking about a bust, but this could be when we're talking about pants. And I think the thing that's important and that I think a lot of pattern making books don't quite cover is when we're thinking about inclusivity in pattern making and doing patterns for people of all sizes. The thing about people of all sizes is even people of maybe more stereotypical sizes, I think, or more sort of mainstream market sizes, you can be the same measurement hip, but you might have a narrower frame and more of a projection back or front even. So thinking about pattern making more in terms of shapes and body mechanics will really help you become a better pattern maker, because rather than relying on specific rules of, oh, my armhole should be 1 inch smaller in the front and 1 inch bigger in the back, a better way to think of it is find something that fits well, measure that difference. So this is, there's rules, but I think it's more of a cross-check. Start to keep track of those different differentials on certain sizes and shapes and see what works. How much of a difference between the front hook on a pant and the back hook do you find that you have on your own pants or on pants that you're working on that are a size 22 or 2? You're going to see differences there. And if you start to think about things in shapes and projections and what dimension we're projecting into, and also the way the body moves, which with legs is mostly front back, but also a little bit side, that will help you understand how to do the pattern a little better, so you can make adjustments that, fit your body or whoever body you're working on. So those are the two major things that I find a lot with knit garments, is that we control armhole and bust shaping by giving ease here. There we go, give that back. So by giving ease from the front to back, and also by making that front armhole smaller, increasing that slope, that is really helpful. The other thing that often is done, and it looks like it's being done here too, yeah. So for wovens, often there is ease in the cap. And so there's a lot of reasons for the ease. There's a lot of, and it's all kind of related to what your bicep is and also what your cap height is. And then of course what this armhole circumference is, because you need this cap length to sew into this armhole, right? So for a woven, often you're going to have more cap length than armhole circumference. So you might have a 1/4 inch ease here and here. And that's because you do need your arm to move around in the garment, and in a woven, it's not stretchy, or even if you have a stretch woven, it's not usually as stretchy as a knit. So you do need that extra fabric. I was going to say that often wovens have higher caps, but that's not really true. It really depends on the garment and the fit and the styling, like the fit aesthetic. So I don't think there's one way to do it. I've seen people do knit tees with higher caps or shorter caps. I'm not a fan of those super short caps. To me, there's no reason that a cap height should be short. I think the only way that really works is if it's really tight, and if you have that very fitted little cap sleeve look, then it's okay. But if if you have like a normal t-shirt sleeve like this one where it's short, but it's not a cap sleeve, a cap sleeve would really be something like this, or much shorter. You still need a cap, because if you don't, what will happen is, let me see if I can adjust her pose. Female pose. I'm going to put her arms down. Pose only. Okay. All right, so we're starting to see it here actually, is that you see that gathering of fabric here, and that's because this cap height actually isn't very tall. I'm not sure exactly how tall it is. Let me see if I can measure it. Point of measure, edit point of measure, no. Segment, I don't know how to just measure something. This is gonna be something that I have to learn. Let's see if we can, okay. So 3.8. What size is she? I'm actually not even sure what size we're talking here. Her bicep is almost 7. So that's part of it, right? This is a pretty roomy bicep for, let me look at her measurements and then I can tell you what size she is. Avatar editor, measure, avatar size. Okay, so she's pretty small. Wow, this is a very small little avatar. Let's see, what's her waist? Her waist is 24. Wow, she's tiny. Okay, so this cap height isn't particularly short, but I would say compared to the bicep, which is something, see, we can see about right there, 6.4. That's pretty roomy for someone who's a size 0, you know, or a size 2. Yeah, so that's why we're seeing so much fullness here. One thing you could do to get rid of that fullness, you would make the bicep smaller. Let's see if I can just move this in. And here. And then you'd increase the cap height. Okay, it's not perfect, but see how now that dropped and now it's hanging a little straighter and not so bunchy? Or let's see it, look at it before. Okay, see how it sticks out? So that's really going to be what you notice. If you increase your cap height, it's going to hang straighter when your arms are down. The reason that you might want a shorter cap height is it's allowing you for more lift, meaning your arms can move up and down more freely. In a knit, I don't really think that's super necessary because knits are pretty stretchy. They're usually meant to be pretty form-fitting. I don't think you really need to worry about lift per se in a knit. But it depends what kind of garment you're working on. If you're working on something that is more performance oriented as opposed to something that's more casual. This is a very casual t-shirt. So, you know, I think this is more about comfort and less about, oh, I'm going to go run 10 miles in this t-shirt or, you know, do something that's very functional. It seems like this design is really about being cute and sort of having a vintage vibe, I guess. But yeah, so this is another thing. So in a woven, you're going to have ease here from the front notch to the top, and then again here. Often, let's say it's maybe like a 1/2 inch total. It can be a lot, actually. It really depends on the style and what kind of fabric and what you need. On a knit, we're often going to do less. So you can see this pattern does have less. This is the back length here, so 3.6 plus 0.3, basically right there, so 3.9. Oh, that looks like it's matching. But here, see, this is interesting. They made the front, unless I accidentally changed this, they made the front smaller. So it matches here, and it matches 4 point here, and 3.6. Oh, nope, I'm sorry. I just, it's just that measurement line. Okay. Yeah, so actually it's 0.3 stretch here and also 0.3 here. So 0.6 total ease stretch, meaning that the armhole is bigger than the sleeve cap. And the reason you want to do that, because if the sleeve on a knit, if the sleeve cap is longer, you're going to get an excess of fabric and you're going to have that sort of rippled bunching look at the cap rather than a nice, clean, cute cap. It's sort of counterintuitive, but it's because this shape is convex or concave. Which one is that? Concave, convex. I feel like this is convex. It depends which way you look at it. But it's a round shape. Even if these lines exactly match, this is a round shape, and inherently there's seam allowance here that is a longer length, and it's going into this shape that has seam allowance that's going to be a shorter length. And so inherently the sleeve is going to look bigger visually and have an excess of fabric once you sew it into a circle. So that's why we have to do this reduction of the cap length on a knit. And if you have a really stretchy, gummy knit, then you might need to do more. If you have a more stable knit, really depends on your fabrication, the thickness of the knit, the stability of the knit. These all are factors in how much ease you might have to place there. So just something to think about if you're making your own t-shirts at home. The other thing to think about with knits is that everything grows and stretches, and this can be a huge challenge. So when we're sewing things, so I think, a lot of traditional pattern makers might look at this armhole and say, well, okay, this is a size 0. So, all of these shapes are a little bit different than maybe what we would typically look at, which is typically a size 6, let's say. But you might look at this armhole and say, hey, this is, you need to scoop it out more in the front or the back. Woven armholes would often have more of a severe scoop here. You might not have this big difference between the front armhole and the back armhole in a woven. But the thing about knits is that things stretch as they're sewn. So as you sew this armhole, it's actually going to get bigger. In my experience, armholes get at least a 1/2 inch bigger in sewing, and really gummy fabrics might get 1 1/4 inch bigger. So it's something you have to take in account for. You might have to make your slope more sloped and your armhole higher because you're assuming that those shapes are going to splay out and get longer. So that is something you have to think about. Super fun. The same with necks. So your neck width is probably going to grow. It's hard to say. A lot of that depends on the construction, the fabric, and the type of trim you're using. If you're using, like, let's say a rib trim and you're using a lot of stretch to put it on, let's say the rib trim is much smaller than the neckline, then it might hold true to what your pattern neck specs are, but it might not. And so I think getting neck width right on a knit can be really difficult, and shape can be really difficult, and it's a lot about trial and error. If you're making something for the first time, I suggest doing like a mock-up, meaning cut out just this front part and back part and practice sewing the neckline and see how much differential you need between the neckline trim, so this banding, and then also the neck shape and what it comes out to. Because if you just cut your garment and then sew it, your neck might be way off. You might have, if it's a new fabric, you don't know how to estimate how much it's going to grow. So that's kind of the fun of knits, is that they are all over the place. So that brings me to the like third and major point of knits, which is that they're highly unstable. And one of the challenges of working with knits as a pattern maker is that knits, it's like every fabrication, every wash, every color can be a totally different animal. So if you're working as a home sewer, this is something to keep in mind. If you're cutting a garment to sew for yourself, you might want to practice with it a little bit before you cut out your final garment. Maybe, like I said, do some mock-ups, see how much things grow, because you might not be able to guess how much that's going to grow until you just do it and just see. The other thing that happens with knits is not only does it grow in sewing, but it also bounces back after you cut it. So what does that mean? So this is our fabric shape. We're going to place it on fabric to get cut out. And what happens is you're going to put pressure on the fabric as you're cutting, right? Those scissors squish it together and then cut along those lines. So that pressure is going to cause the fabric, after you cut it, to bounce back. It might not be as obvious. If you cut one garment, you might not see a lot of bounce back because there's just one layer of paper and then the fabric underneath. It might bounce back a little bit, maybe a 1/4 inch. You might see that your overall length is 1/4 inch less than your pattern. Sometimes people call that shrinkage. It's a combination of shrinkage. Knits do shrink, especially when you steam them or wash them. But the other thing they do is bounce back. So if you're cutting multiple garments, and let's say in production, usually production cuts are, let's say, between at least 10 plies to 50 or 60 plies. Maybe an ideal range is more like 20 to 40 plies. It really depends on the factory and the cutting room and all these things. But the more plies you have, the more bounce back you're going to get, because you're going to have more layers that are going to be squished down as you're cutting all of those plies together. And then once you release them, they're probably, the bottom ply may be pulled more or pulled less. And so you might see uneven bounce back where some of that same cut might bounce back more or less. So you might see that some of those garments are shorter than others. And that's really what that's all about, is because of the bounce back. So these are all super fun things that we as knit pattern makers get to think about a lot. Shrinkage, stretching, how to do a lot with very little, meaning how to make something look balanced and even with very few seam lines. So you get really used to using shoulder slope, armhole differential, ease at the side seam. These are all great things to take advantage of when you are doing a knit pattern. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there for today. That's just a little intro to knit pattern making and why it's so complicated. But I would love to do, and maybe I'll do a little bit further into knit pattern making and explain more about a specific type of garment. If you have any requests, please leave them below. So far I've been pretty casual about what I've been chatting about, because the world is just so wide open. But I'd love to niche in and answer some questions if any of you are interested in knit pattern making. Personally, I have the most experience with knit pattern making and USA made manufacturing. That's really what I specialize in my career. So I'd love to talk about knits in depth. I have so much to say. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.